Welcome back to Grace Stories. I just want to thank you all again for watching and listening, sharing these. I'm hoping that we can continue to keep doing this. As you're listening to this, we may make an adjustment on the schedule. We've been doing these every week. I locked myself into a little bit of unsustainable schedule when I decided
too fast
that I was going to try and do one every week, and I'm hoping that it was beneficial for some, but I'm looking at some other things that we can be doing as a church to fill in those gaps on other weeks, and it helps me really set up interviews and different people, because I have to work with people's schedules, like Cameron Byers here. And so that's who we're going to talk to today. I've known Cameron, and I've known his kids and family for a while. They've been here ever since I've been here at the church. And Cameron serves in some different areas here. And, to me, I think he's just really involved with the church. And I think there are some interesting things that a lot of people, they might relate with or appreciate hearing. And I'm not going to pump it up too much to make you nervous. But, I am super excited for this conversation and for the conversations we're going to have. So if you've got any thoughts on the schedule or anything else, just let us know, and you all can, email us and contact us, and you can find that stuff on the website. But with all of that said, Cameron, first of all, I just want to say thank you for coming on and talking. This is a different setup because we've got some tea and different things.
You gotta have tea. It's not a serious conversation without tea. You can quote me.
I appreciate it. It'll be good for my throat, because after doing these for an hour or so, it can get a little rough. But one of the first things for people that may not know you, if you don't mind sharing, maybe, how your family got to Grace, or how long they've been here, and what it's kind of been like for you being at Grace.
Yeah. So I came to Grace Grace Church back in 2007 when I moved here for work, and then got married. And it was just like, let's do all the difficult things at the same time. Actually, I heard about Grace Church because I went to school with Joe Kaufman's daughter, Shelly. And I met her at Campus Crusade, and she was like, yeah, my dad's church. And she would talk about it. I was like, that's cool. And I applied for a job here and was, by God's grace, accepted with ConocoPhillips. And so moved here, then got engaged and married. Been a part of Grace ever since. And I've been trying to serve in some capacity ever since here. So I was on just offering team, and my wife has been very active in children's ministry and teaching. Yeah, she's got a big passion for kids. So
it's been fun to see you guys do different things, and I've gotten to work with you guys as on with the kids stuff and with other things like worship team, and so I always love to see people that are really passionate about serving in whatever area it can be. You talk about ConocoPhillips and being accepted into that job. What job is that? What is that like?
So I work in IT department. I do geospatial mapping. So anything with a map that usually has a database component sitting behind it. So if you're dealing with people who own certain sections of land, you have to make sure they get paid. The right taxes are paid to the government. And that stuff spans the globe. I wear a bunch of hats. They keep putting hats on top of my head, and I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And other stuff I do is with reserves, which is just mapping how wells produce over time and predicting what they'll do in the future. So some math involved and all that, but primarily software support, workflow assistance. It's really fun, but it sounds kind of dry at first.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I love it.
When you were going to school, and you mentioned Campus Crusade, but
Yeah.
what was your spiritual background like before you came to Grace, and what were you going to school for, and some of those different things?
Okay. So Christ called me, I think, when I was quite young, maybe about 5 or 6, to be honest. I was at a Lutheran daycare, and they were very good at presenting the gospel. And so I don't know if you're just listening, you can't see, but my right hand, I was born with a certain condition called complex syndactyly, where certain fingers were fused together in utero. So I had to have a bunch of surgeries by the time I had 7 surgeries by the time I was 5. And it brought a bit of awareness that, okay, well, I didn't quite fit in. I knew that I felt on the inside the way a lot of other people seem to feel. So I had more of an acute awareness of how much I needed saving, even from a very young age. So I've been a Christian largely all my life, happily, deeply in love with Christ and all the things he continues to do and show me and teach me, even in my humblest moments. So in college, I went to study computer engineering, minor in mathematics at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. And I was always involved in campus stuff there, ministries or outreach or what have you, through any and all organizations that I could find. I really liked serving. I really liked working to be a part of something that God was already doing in meeting new people and in reaching them, doing evangelism. It's wonderful to participate in that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you've done that, and you move to Bartlesville, and you start coming to Grace. One of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about during this, what led you to start serving in some of the capacities that you are now? I mean, right now you're playing bass, and there'll probably be some follow-up questions, but what are some of the struggles you mentioned, your hand.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that you think about when you're playing an instrument.
How can you play an instrument?
So what led you to start serving in that way at the church? What motivated you to try and do that?
Child's toy. Prior Christmas, let's see, this must have been about 2 or 3 years ago, we bought my eldest son a ukulele. He had a toy guitar when he was younger, and kind of abused it a bit. And I was like, okay, well, it wasn't really a musical instrument.
Yeah.
But so we let's get him something that could legitimately be a musical instrument. And he started plucking with it and playing around. It's like, ooh, that looks like fun. Daddy's going to get a new toy also. And so I bought myself a ukulele and started playing it. I was like, okay, I can plunk along with this. Oh, I have an instrument now that I can play. Guess I need to serve somehow. I don't know. It's like the motivation naturally for anything I learn. It's like, okay, what can I do with this now? So I was like, okay, I'll just start showing up to band practice on Thursdays. And I know ukulele's not really it's a very niche, you think it's niche-ish instrument, right? It's like all happy and, so I started playing, and this was when Sarah, I think, was still leading. And so she very kindly was like, oh, that's great. Yeah. How do you feel about learning bass? Cause they needed someone to fit that. I was like, oh, never thought of that before. 4 strings. All right. I think I can do that. It's not too bad. I should probably back up a bit. When I was young, I did have a musical background. I studied piano for a while, played in the marching band, played French horn, keyboard because I knew piano. I could read music.
Uh-huh.
Probably to a fault when I focused exclusively on reading from sheet music. Because like for those of you who maybe don't know, worship music and like sheet music stuff are kind of different. When you see the sheet that they hand you for playing the band here, you get chords and that's it. Unless you're the piano, there may be a lead sheet or something which will kind of outline or sketch out the melody that you want to play. But everybody else, you just got a chord and you got to figure out how do you fit in the groove with the band? So musically, that was a big difference for me because I came from, handling everything on piano to what is this bass thing? Or what is this? And the thing about bass, it's like 60%, 70%, it's a rhythm instrument. It's not as much about the notes because the notes are usually so low. It's more of something you feel inside you rather than hear it. And everything else sits on top of it. And that's where you're just providing the steady, either it's a quarter note, 4 on the floor, whatever, or there's a little bit of syncopation, dot, whatever. But yeah, as I was entering into the wonderful world of bass, it's fun. You guys should try it if you get a chance. Yeah. God's been blessing me through a lot of just meeting other people, other musicians here in the community, and sometimes just going out and having jam sessions with them, just playing whatever.
Yeah, one of the things that I appreciate you talking about was the fact that, Sarah talked about the need of, since I've been here, we've not had a lot of bass players, and really not a lot of people playing string instruments. I mean, we've never had a lot of guitar players. We've never had a lot of bass players, maybe, one or two, every once in a while. And so, it definitely, I think that there's something to be said when you're stretched to say, this is a need we have, can you fill it, rather than you saying, well, this is what I want to do, and can you use it? Because I think a lot of people, when they approach something like serving in the church, it's, this is what I want to do, how can I do it in the church? And how can you make a place for me to do the thing? And I think it's very different when someone, that's in leadership in the church can say, this is what we're looking for and what we need. Can you do that?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people are apprehensive because it's, well, I don't know how, or that's not what I was prepared for. And so maybe I don't want to do that. I'm willing to serve, but only to this point. So what was, did you have any of those struggles starting out and thinking, is this something that I really want to do? Or is this really what God's calling me to do?
Not as much. I was always just open to doing whatever. Because that's where the fun happens, when God calls you to do something that's maybe a little bit out of your comfort zone or you're not familiar with. That's okay. Everything is learning. It's just, practice for eternity, right? That's the exciting part is, hey, guess what? There's going to be a time after this where anything you've cultivated here in this life, you're going to get a chance to continue to use it for God's service later. Might as well start now, right? Yeah. It's like, why wait? Just go for it. Make yourself available and see what the needs are. Start meeting them.
Yeah. So as you started playing and practicing, were there any things that like immediately were obstacles or things that you had to start learning or adapting? I mean, the thing I think of, I'm not a bass player, but I've played bass and I know how to play.
You do a good job. you have like this intuitive sense of rhythm, which is really nice. Yeah, it's good, man.
It helps me having a musical background a little bit and doing it for so long with stringed instruments specifically. I don't play keys. I don't play a lot of those other stuff, but I've played a lot of string instruments. And one of the things whenever I played bass and, I kind of switch back and forth between either plucking the strings with my thumb or with my two forefingers.
Yeah.
And so what, is there anything like that, or maybe even other things like having to, learn the strings
Writing
and the
without
notes,
buzzing, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Yes. So the nice thing about these instruments is there's so much history behind them, and other artists who have over the years matured the instrument and the body of works that have come with. I found myself sort of leaning towards maybe a little bit more rhythm and blues, a little bit more jazz or syncopated works, like James Jamerson in particular. Ain't No Mountain High Enough. Listen to that. Listen to how the bass kind of plays. Doom, boom, boom, boom. It plays around. It goes up and down. And the thing that I paid attention to is he only played with one finger on his plucking hand, just his thumb. But he's got a good sense of rhythm, and that's what mattered. That's what made a lot of the songs that he did, is this underplay of boom, 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 boom. Stuff that makes a nice bass for all the melodies to sit on and really punch out, right? And so, yeah, I kind of started studying a lot of these guys and a lot of these other artists in past history and how their stuff works and how they did it. Tried to imitate some, just as figure out what works for me, and
one of the things that I think people, and it can be teaching kids class, it can be it can be playing an instrument, it can even be certain things like engaging with people with in a greeter team. You have to kind of foster and practice certain things, whether it's practicing the actual instruments or practicing the way that you think about certain things when you enter into
mindset.
And so I think a lot of people just think, well, if I can't just go in and do it the first time the way I want, then maybe God's not calling me to do it. And it's I've never done that before, so I don't know if I can. Even if someone comes and says, hey, I can see the way you're doing this. Have you ever thought about trying this? And, I appreciate you talking about, just going in and looking at what other people have done with it and trying to think, well, how can I try to imitate or do those things, and then kind of make it my own and make it your own thing and take ownership over it. And I think when you start doing that and it becomes, you're doing a task for someone else, you're serving, you're kind of doing a job more or less on a Sunday, except it's not paid. And I think that people think, all
compensation is generally deferred.
Yeah.
We'll say that.
Yeah. And,
No,
and so, one of the things I think people don't realize is how much they can get from those experiences.
Yeah.
And it's not something that's, necessarily like a physical payment or, maybe even not even like the recognition or anything right up front. But for you, has there been anything that you felt like, man, I've really felt blessed or fed in these ways because I'm serving, which seems kind of antithetical.
Yes. For one thing, just the pure joy of worship. It cannot be understated or underemphasized is when you're really entering into worship. And this is on Thursday night practices. This is at home when I'm playing along to the YouTube and got it, playing and the kids are singing along, and you're entering into the worship of the living God. That if that were the only thing, that's enough, right? That is pure distilled sweetness for the soul to worship the living God and be in communion with Him and be singing words of praise or notes of praise as you're playing because you know you're doing it for the glory of God. It's not so small a thing. But that being said, there has been tons of blessing that's come through it besides. For one thing, getting to know the people in the band. There's some fantastic musicians. You're one of them. Yeah, guys who have this experience, this wealth of musical knowledge and all the stuff they've been through. Jeremy on the guitar, Daniel on the piano. I mean, they're all fantastic. Trey on drums. These are skilled people who have devoted time into their craft, and God has shaped them and given them this skill. It's really exciting to see. And so the friendships here in the church, but also as I've entered into the world of string instruments, because I had nothing to do with that, or ukulele. I was all, piano and very mediocre. Give me some sheet music, I can figure stuff out, but I'm often more plonkety, whatever. But having this skill, entering into string instruments brought me more connection with other people at work. Guys who, like one of the coworkers I know he's not a believer, but he still plays in a band, plays guitar, saxophone and stuff. And having this other shared experience and knowledge that we can relate with. And then getting to spend time with him and having jam sessions, him coming over to my place or I'm going over to his place and we're just sitting there grooving, figuring stuff out. Yeah, it's a way of really connecting with people.
Yeah. So, and that's one of the things, I've heard people talk about when it comes to the band is it's almost, it like functions like as a group in itself. And I know that, Jared and a lot of other, musicians and singers, you guys are, talking to each other during the week sometimes about different things. And there are moments where, you guys get to pray for each other. And one of the things was that I want to maybe talk about just a little bit, but do you feel, and I don't know what your, default personality type is or anything, but was it hard to start, engaging with some of these people that maybe you didn't know at first, or did having the shared connection help a little bit in being able to, start talking together and
music is another way of speaking without speaking. It's a language. And so as you're working together, playing in a band, you start to learn each other's kind of patterns, musical patterns, your groove, how they go things. And it's a way of, as you just spend time with one another, you get to know each other, and it happens very naturally. I was fortunate. I think David Herrick kind of really helped break the ice with him and Jeremy both were just kind of very welcoming and very, extremely just hospitable. Just the spirit of, hey, we're really glad you're here. We're glad that you're trying to learn this thing. Here's how this particular part, they were really excellent teachers, and I was happy to learn, very happy to learn, because these guys have been there, they've done that, they've got the experience. And so that was quite nice to have such welcoming people. Yeah.
I think that, whenever you can serve with others, it helps kind of take some of the stress off, and it makes it seem a little easier.
Yeah.
And you can all, come in and it's, we're all in this together. It's all one thing, and no one person's, trying to, be the center of everything that's going on.
Right. Harmoniously working together for the glorification of God, whatever it is. Painting a high school, serving elsewhere in the community, working together as a group, definitely. It's the body of Christ. Right? It's knit together and functioning in the way that it's supposed to. And it's miraculous and normal at the same time. Because it is definitely a spiritual thing. But it's also, just how we're built. And it's cool to see the Spirit working in and among people like that.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I really enjoy about when I do get to play with the worship team. I love being able to.
No, seriously, it's so pretty. The mandolin is such a wonderful, and the violin. Oh my.
Yeah, and it's fun to be able to do the things with different people, and everyone has their own way of doing certain things, and you learn to listen and back off in the right moments, and come in at the right moments. And then, when you've got people, leading in the worship team or in any ministry area, then it makes it even easier when you have that, to kind of help drive the ship, so to speak. For me personally, one of the things that's been that whenever I do get to play, and whether it's here or anywhere else I've ever been, one of the things that I love is the fact that you can, in ways, help others, kind of share in that experience, even if they're not playing the instrument.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it comes across in the way that you are thinking about it when you're on stage, but also in the way that you are just moving and interacting. So what has that been like for you? Like when you're playing, what are some of the mindsets that you have, or what are some of the things that you have realized that you start doing, on a Sunday to kind of express that worship attitude?
Oh, well, one of the things that I did have to overcome was don't screw up, kind of don't play the wrong. And it still happens sometimes. You're like, I fretted the wrong note. I'm supposed to be quiet here. Oh no. And so sometimes people notice, and you're like, sorry, I'm trying to do better. But in general, no. There's a inertia to music that oftentimes, when you've got enough people on stage producing enough melody and sound all together, it pulls everything together. There's a gravity to it all. And so usually it gets hidden in that. As far as attitudes go, a lot of it is humility, for one thing. It's like, okay, this is service, right? I get to do this to as a service to God, that I love Him and I want to show it, and I want to do something. Often I sometimes just forget there's an audience. It's just like, it's just practice, which is, yes, it is worship, but it is, again, practice for eternity. We're going to sing and never get tired. We're going to be able to, the glory that's waiting for us in the presence of the living God, which we can sort of get glimpses of here every Sunday. Every time you worship, you get those glimpses of what eternity is in that moment. You kind of lose track of maybe where you are or who you are, and you're thinking more about the word, Christ the cornerstone, and the words of Scripture are going through your heads, the stumbling block, and you're reminded about whatever the song is talking about, the nature of Christ and His wonderfulness and His power and His might and His trustworthiness. Whatever the song is, you're being drawn up into that engagement with the divine. And at the same time, you're also, okay, this is the first chorus. I'm going to play it low. I'm not going to go very, I don't drop any fifths or anything in. There's nothing quick. And then there's a natural progression of, as the song enters in, it crescendos a bit, and then things, you start to add little fills into it to fill out the song more as it expands. But yeah.
Yeah. I think that one of the things, and you may be able to talk about this too, but whether you're on a stage or whether you're sitting in the crowd or in the chairs, you're standing. Oh yeah. All
right.
When you're doing any of that and you're singing or you're using whatever you have and you're giving that to God in worship, there can be those moments where you're not thinking about, am I singing too loud or am I singing
No such thing.
Off key or whatever, because ultimately like the
That's my problem, not my wife's problem.
and one of the things that you may talk about too, you before you were playing bass, I noticed that you and your family, you guys love to worship, and it doesn't matter where you're at. So for people out there where, maybe they're saying, oh yeah, you can only feel that way because you're up there and we're not up there. What would you say to something like that?
No. I mean, learn to worship wherever you're at. If I had my druthers, everyone would be on stage. All right. I don't know if do you know Ron Canoli back from the 1990s?
I know the name.
Ancient of Days.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at some of his concerts, and you can see them on YouTube, it's like there are as many people on stage as there are in the audience, right? Everybody is participating. There are so many musicians, it's insane. And there's like a massive choir there, and then everybody's just singing. And you can do that. I mean, even if you're in the audience, you're participating. You're part of the heavenly choir, as it were. As for the attitude of worship, that's something we intentionally try to cultivate in our family. We pick a hymn of the month is one of our standard things. So every night we're singing this hymn and talking about what the words are and what they mean. That's our thing. And I don't want the kids to just be, they're kids. They want to move around. So I'll kind of yank them off into the back and we'll jump up and down. Back in college, that's kind of what our church was a bit like. When we played things by Matt Redman or what's the crazy guy with the hair? Why can I not remember his name?
David Crowder?
Yes, thank you. I will dance, I will sing to be mad for my king. Yeah. And we'd just be stomping. We'd just be jumping. And I want that kind of excitement to percolate down to my kids so they know that just like when David was dancing with all his might, and he's a warrior, mind you, so you think about all your might dancing with that much force. I mean, that's the kind of worship that I want my kids to see and think, oh, that's normal, right? You want to think about engaging with praise so forcefully with your entire body, right? So we try to model that, or at least small way.
I think there are people where, they come in, and it's true of people that are on a stage and playing something, or you're sitting there, or you're standing, or wherever, your hands, maybe they're raised or maybe they're not super raised, because you're thinking about maybe what other people are thinking or what they might be, doing. And I think for so many people, if they didn't worry so much about everything going on around them, they would probably be able to engage deeper into worship and the music and everything that's going on. And I think when you aren't concerned about, people looking at you or anything like that, then you can begin to have an experience with the body and with God that you wouldn't have otherwise. And that, for me personally, that was something that, I had to and I sometimes still have to readdress it and think about it again. Cause I started playing music on stage when I was really young and worried what people might think, or like you said, playing the wrong notes or whatever. And I still deal with that. And even though I don't play as many wrong notes as I did when I first started,
I haven't heard one yet.
So. They're there. They're just well hidden.
Oh, there you go. You're like, oh, just slide into that.
But for me, the times I've had where whether I'm just singing, for me singing in the sound booth, or being up front, the times where I'm not worrying about what's going on around me so much, and I'm just worrying about is this something that's pleasing to God? Then I think in those moments where I'm doing that, I have some of the best worship experiences that I've ever had. And so, for you, what have been some of the nice moments, or what are some of the things that are really encouraging for you, whether it's, what you're doing on stage or on practice nights or whatever?
Honestly, yeah, the practice nights, I really do find those encouraging, where there's a lot less stress because you don't feel like, okay, there's an expectation of flawlessness or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really there, but just the low keyness of, okay, you're with everyone. Let's start running through the song. You maybe go through it once, and then you're like, okay, let's refine it. Let's focus on these areas or something. But that continued experience with people over time, particularly the more you have, those are the moments when you have a very full band on stage, like with everybody, with you on mandolin and fiddler, all that. So yeah, if you guys have a musical skill, you should volunteer. We need more. Like we should have to reinforce the stage. We have so many musicians or something on it. I don't know. Maybe that would be too much of a production, but at the same time, it's like, how could you have too much with regards to worship of the infinite God? It's like, no, let's have everybody participating somehow. And yeah, I understand orderly fashion, and you gotta not have too much chaos. You want it still to be, but just having everybody participating, or a lot of people participating, there's something special when you have such a large group working together. Another thing that comes to mind is the Christmas productions, when we would prepare for those, and we would have the choir that one time. That was really it's just really, really nice to hear them all singing songs we've heard before. There's a lot of nostalgia factor in that too, but it's so beautiful, and you really enter into the spirit of worship that way.
Yeah. You may end up creating more work for Jared. The people might start, man, like sending him emails or something and asking for things. He can handle it, I'm sure. He's
a very capable individual.
Yeah. So, talking about some of those things, I don't think anyone's gotten to hear, and I haven't really gotten to hear much. Everyone was so used to, the Sunday mornings, the Thursday night practices. What was it like for you whenever we were recording worship, and we were bringing the same group in every week, but then also you're playing, and then you are worshiping on Sunday morning, and you're worshiping, and you're watching yourself on there. What was that like for you?
It's, a little bit nerve-wracking, to be honest, because it's like, now no, did I mess up here? Kind of. There is a bit of that at first, self-criticism. It doesn't really matter. It was very nice, though, to be able to be with my family together as we're watching what we've already recorded before. That's nice. It's always fun to worship with family together in that way. And sometimes I'll pull out the ukulele or something and start just tooling around with the melody or some of the chords, which is fun because then it's like you're overdubbing yourself kind of or something. That was nice just to be with family. That's kind of that was the nicest thing, I think.
Yeah. So, we've talked about some of the things, that you struggle with, like learning to play the bass and doing those. And obviously there's lots of, high moments and low moments when it comes to serving. And so, what have been some of the, have there been any moments where you've, thought maybe you weren't so sure about what you were doing or about, whether you needed to be, serving in that way, have there ever been anything like that?
That's a question. Mainly it was more due to physical capability. I've had a couple injuries, just random ache, things that happen, either a messed up elbow or costochondritis, inflammation of like the rib area that kind of made things difficult for a while. It became physically painful. It's heavy. It's probably one of the heavier of the instruments, particularly if you've got a 5-string,
especially if it's strapped to your neck.
If it's hanging on, which is why I kind of want a chair that I can kind of sit down every now and then and rest, because over an extended set, particularly on like the Sunday night worship, the evening worship sessions where it's just straight through, like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
It's a long time. And that doesn't count the practice that you do ahead of time and the practice you've been doing, also ahead of time on your own.
Yeah.
So physical capability came into it a bit for me because the body is weak. Just everything's breaking down. But by God's grace, actually, I found out that they make this is a recent invention in the past 10 years, the U-bass, that little guy that I bought him specifically because I was in a little bit too much pain to have my full size bass. But the U-bass, he's a nice little light guy, which is cool. It's a ukulele size roughly, but it's still got piezo pickups, and it actually sounds a lot more warmer to my ear, a lot more like a big double bass, a proper size, dum, dum, dum. Just because of how it works. It's a hollow body instrument, and how the pickups are piezo instead of electronic.
Yeah. I've played. I don't have a 5-string. I've played them though before, and they are way heavier than they look. And if you know what the weight of a normal guitar would be, then you practically double that, because they can get pretty hefty,
beefy.
And I think that we all have different moments where maybe we're that whatever that could have been or what it is in the moment, maybe there's some spiritual warfare in those moments.
Could be.
And maybe not. But I think that the continue to keep after it and to not let those things stop you in the moment. And it could be true whether, you're talking about your hand or those physical things, with shoulder pains or elbow pains. I think that if it's something that God's really wanting you to do in the moment, then there are probably times where you don't feel those as much, and you are able to power through sometimes.
His strength has to be sufficient, right? It is exactly like with Paul when he had his thorn in the flesh. That doesn't mean you stop. You just persevere and let your weakness be filled up with his strength, because that's where the miraculous stuff starts coming in, when it's really beyond your physical capability, and you still like, here I am, Lord. What would you make of me? What would you have me serve?
Mm-hmm.
Now that being said, there's a time for rest.
Yeah.
It's a balance.
Mm-hmm. So thinking about some of that stuff, and you've been playing bass for a few years now at the church.
Yeah.
What are things that you are hoping to do? Are there other instruments that you've been trying to learn? Has it motivated you to do other things, or to think of other ways that you can serve, or participate in what God's working in that area of your life?
Other instruments, there's always, I could try to learn mandolin, for instance. I was at a shop downtown that just opened, like Matt's. Yeah. And I was like, I could maybe try and figure that out. To be honest, right now, life's a little full.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm balancing. I have responsibility to family. We got brand new baby, just 2 weeks old. So it's a little, my service is moving more towards, I need to maybe take a little time to focus on caring for the family right now. But I'm sure as time goes on and things smooth out, there'll be more opportunities for something somewhere. I guess we never talked about small groups and stuff.
Well, and I was about to say, even if you, as you're getting busy with those sorts of things, and you start to, maybe you're not playing bass as much.
Yeah.
You guys still, you have a small group, and you guys are still, serving in other ways, and, and before you, we started recording this, you were telling me about, conversations that you were having with neighbors and different things like that. And so, when thinking about those sorts of things, and thinking about, you mentioning being able to talk about music with a coworker. I think just to kind of start wrapping up, for people that think, well, if I serve, I'm only going to be able to serve in this one way. If you're doing some of those sorts of things, and you're inviting people, and you've got your small group, what has that been like in doing that, and also serving on Sundays?
So it's, the body of Christ is way bigger than just Sundays, obviously. There's way more going on, like all the time, and especially in this church. There's always something happening here throughout the week. So opportunities to serve abound. We've always, and I love this about Grace in particular, is they've focused always on having a nice small group community where you can really engage with people, and that is a little bit more challenging in this particular set of circumstances. But you continue to, you persist, you continue to meet, you continue to encourage everyone, as long as it's called today, right? Do not neglect to meet together. This is the habit of some, but encourage one another. And that includes, I think, just meeting even outside of your small group, just intentionally trying to maintain connections with others, which is particularly important right now when everybody's all, stay away from me. That's still really important to engage and meet with people. In some ways, it's become a little bit easier, because we're out and about walking the neighborhood quite a bit more than I think before, for some reason. I don't know why, but it's helped open us up to new relationships, and continuing to find natural places to minister to other people, to help, whether it's, I'm moving to a new house or something, I need help moving, or just talking about stuff, how to protect apple trees from the deer problem. Stupid deer.
Yeah, I appreciate you talking about, looking for ways to minister. And I think sometimes, and it can even be true for myself working in a church where I might say I've put in my time, whether my time is Sunday morning or it's, Sunday morning plus Monday through Friday. And when I'm not like on the clock, so to speak, then I don't need to worry about it. Or if even I'm coming in on a Sunday morning and maybe I'm not slated to serve on that Sunday, to think, well, now I'm kind of like off the clock and I can just come and be fed. But I think the way that you talk about it, it's much more, the Spirit's going to lead you in different ways at different times, and you can't necessarily schedule the way God's going to be leading you.
Yeah.
And I think that some people sometimes will think of it in those ways. And so I've heard the way that you guys have, just engaged people, invited people to your small group, and you've, had conversations with people impromptu, whether it's neighbors or coworkers or whatever. And I think that that's something that should be, honored and appreciated, because I think it's something that we all should work to do naturally, but sometimes it doesn't come naturally to everyone. And it may not to you guys as well. I mean, it may be something that you've cultivated over time and worked on.
You definitely have to work at it. It's not easy because everybody, the tendencies is sometimes to just kind of retreat into our own comfortable bubble. And I'm not saying we don't do that still. We are trying to, again, on purpose, open our lives up. And that is a constant battle, to be vulnerable, to be inconvenienced. To be willing to be inconvenienced. That's tough when it already feels inconvenient enough with trying to manage children. You come over here and you stay put. Stop hitting your sister. Don't yell or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I've seen it as, you guys come in on Sunday mornings, and whether it's you with your family, like worshiping or talking to people, or even seeing Lydia just step in and serve, maybe when it's not even her day to serve in different areas, like in the nursery or whatever. And not everyone would be that open to just doing whatever in the moment, and to be inconvenienced, like you said. So, I personally, applaud that. And I know other people on staff who have talked about that. And, so, I appreciate that and want to highlight that. And so, what has it, just if you can kind of wrap up all of it, what would you say to someone that's listening, someone that maybe is thinking, I want to find a way to serve, whether I, am trying to engage with people in a small group, or I'm trying to, serve in a new capacity. What would you say to that person that's listening? They've listened to all of this and they're kind of thinking, well, what's next for me?
Well, pray. First of all, let God know what you're thinking. Not that he doesn't already know, but it helps you to, when you actually speak it or pray it, to think through, what, God, how can you use me? I do want to do something. I want to rejoice and labor with my fellow believers. I want to do things to show my ecstatic love for you. And talk to people here at church. There's plenty of opportunities. Like, hey, we could use some people here. You just, sometimes it's just show up and say, here I am. How can you use me for anything? Just be willing to step out and ask.
Yeah. I think that so often people think either they're going to get hit over the head with an opportunity, or it's going to just come down in some kind of some just clear, spectacular way. And I think sometimes it just happens naturally over time. I mean, talking about playing bass and serving on the team didn't happen overnight, and it took time. And I'm sure doing different things with like your small group or the way that you have connected with people around you has taken time, and it was slow. And some of that time is spent with some of us on staff who, want to engage with you guys that are looking for ways to connect. And maybe you don't, know exactly how that will look, and not saying that we know exactly how it will look right away, but we can,
God knows.
Yeah. And we can do it together, and we can, work on those things together. And, I just appreciate, you and your family and being able and willing to do that. And I hope that, this conversation is something that people can be encouraged by and think about, and maybe challenge them a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, before we close, is there anything else that you want to say? And
if you really love the church, you should serve somewhere. Just anywhere, really. If you really love the body of Christ, they will know you're a Christian by your love for the brethren, right? For your love of other Christians. Try, just ask, pray, go.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for coming on and talking and just sharing a little bit about, I know there's probably so much more that, you could talk about. And I would encourage any of you listening, if you want to learn more, I'm sure Cameron would be more than willing to, talk and share some of his experiences with you, whether it's in his house or here at the church or whatever. And if this has encouraged you to want to look at ways to serve or to engage deeper in our church, reach out to us. You can reach out to me. You can just call us, email us, whatever. Write us a note, a letter. We'll take whatever form we can get. And
smoke signals.
Yeah, your preferred method of communication. We're all trying all sorts of ways.
Telegraph.
And so, with that said, if you're looking for anything else, you're looking for other stories like this, you can listen to those wherever you listen to podcasts by searching Grace Stories. We are kind of building up a bank of them right now, and so there's probably some you haven't heard. If you think you've listened to them all, there's probably a few more. You can watch them on YouTube. We've got video versions where you can see some of the things that are on these desks, different people and their different cups or whatever. And you can always connect with us on social media and follow us, GCC Bartlesville. You can find all the links to everything, these stories, sermons, and more on our website, gccbartlesville.org. Thank you all for listening, liking, commenting, sharing, all of that. And we will talk to you in a couple weeks.